RecyclerView. Hello everyone. So in this video we will speak about the RecyclerView. So RecyclerView is an advanced model of ListView. So as you know, when we spoke about ListView in the previous video, we covered most of its basic function. RecyclerView is used to show a group of information to the user, like ListView. And when the user clicks one of the sort of information groups, RecyclerView will do a particular action. Okay, so RecyclerView gives the developer more comfortable, shall we say, working features. You can see it here on the right side picture. This is RecyclerView. So it'll do an action when the user clicks one of these items. Also, you can do your design in RecyclerView as well. So the list view shows information from top to bottom. RecyclerView can show you information both from top to bottom and from left to right. So let's go to Android Studio and see how to create a RecyclerView in practice. All right, my friends. So first of all, I want to show you the finished version of the application that I've made with RecyclerView. So as you can see, here are the country flags in a circular image view. And again, here are the country names and the related flag information. Now, of course, this information is displayed in the recycler view here. So we will also create a card view, and that design will be here as well. So we'll always try to use RecyclerView in conjunction with card view. And you can increase the number of categories here. So also, when we click on any category, a toast message will be displayed indicating that we clicked on that category. And the final version of our application will look just really similar to this. You might customize it a little bit differently, but it's generally going to look like this. So I'll tell you that RecyclerView offers us a more flexible operation compared to the ListView component. So if you notice, here we can curl the corners of card design. We can leave a space between the cards. We can color the cards. So in general, our RecyclerView application will kind of look like this. So let's start making our project. So first I'm going to create a new project. Click on the File tab in the upper left corner. Click on New Project. And after selecting Empty Activity from the page it opens, I'll just click the Next button. I'll make the name of the project RecyclerView Example. But of course, you'll be able to type any name. I'm not looking, I promise. The package name will be, as shown here. I don't want to change the location where the project will be saved, but of course that is up to you. Just remember, and then you can click here. Now the minimum SDK can be API 21. All right, so finally, let's start creating our project by clicking on the Finish button. So our project is currently being created, and you can wait for just a little bit. And sure enough, as you can see, our project has been created. So first, let's go ahead and do the design of our application. So to do that, I'll open the activity main.xml, and we can close the project directory. Just by clicking the eye icon here, I choose the Show System UI option. So the design area will look like a phone screen. So now let's delete the XView component here. All right, so I've completely emptied my design area. We'll add in a RecyclerView component to the design area. For this, I'll choose the RecyclerView component from the palette. And here I have to tell you this. In order to use the RecyclerView component, you will need to add the material design library to your project. I'm sure you don't remember, unless maybe you've heard about it, but in previous iterations of Android Studio, we had to manually add this library to the dependencies section in the Gradle build file in the project directory. But with all the new updates, the material design library is now automatically added to the project. And that means that we can just go right ahead and use the RecyclerView component directly. Excellent, excellent. So if you see a download button right next to the RecyclerView component here, just click on it, and that'll add the material design library required to use the RecyclerView component to your project. Otherwise, you won't be able to use the RecyclerView component, right? And of course, if you're using the current version of Android Studio, the material design library is automatically added to your project, and you can just use RecyclerView component just like we're doing. So now I'll drag the RecyclerView component and drop it on the design area. And what do you know? It takes up the entire design area. Since our root element, that is the bottom layout, is the constraint layout, I have to determine the constraint values of the RecyclerView component. So for that, I can just pin the RecyclerView component up, right, down, left from the layout part in the attribute section. Also make sure that the constraint values remain 0, and that way they'll fill the screen completely. All right, cool. Now, let's set the ID of the RecyclerView component. I'll write RecyclerView to the top ID section. You can specify the ID as you wish. I'll create the ID just by pressing Enter on the keyboard. So actually, this is the design of the main activity. If we want to show some data in the RecyclerView component, well, we'll have to make a separate design for that later. Now, as we carry on with our course, we will import this design into the RecyclerView with an adapter class. But at this point in the design, it's just going to be a card view, all right? So, let's get started making our design. First of all, I have to create a new design file. So for this, I'll select the layout folder under the resource folder from the project directory and right-click with the mouse. And here I'll choose New Layout Resource File options from the drop-down menu. And here we'll just determine a name of the layout design that we will create from the window that opens. Write card design in the file name section here. You can give any name that you want. However, leave the root element as constraint layout. Cool? All right. So I'll press the OK button without changing anything else. And as you can see, a new design file has been created under the layout folder. So whatever design that we want to appear on the screen, we must design it in this layout. Now we can start making our necessary design. We can close the project directory, and we'll move the design area a little closer. So first of all, we'll add a card view component to the design area. So if you type card view into the search bar in the palette, you can see the card view component. So what I just explained for the RecyclerView, that is the material design library, has been added to the project. So it's also valid for card view. And, just to make your study complete, in previous versions, we could use the card view component manually by pressing the download button right here. So if you are working with an older version, that's probably what you're looking at. But now it's automatically implemented in the project. So I'll drag the card view component and drop it in the component tree area this time. And you can drag and drop components into the design area or the componentry area. So as you can see, the card view component took up the entire screen. And if we look at the application once again, we can see the area covered by the card view component. So in other words, the height of the card view component will be just like this. It'll take up this much space on the screen. So we'll set this up in a moment. Now let's add the image view and text view components to the design area. Now, at this point, I got to say that we're not going to directly import components into card view. First of all, we will place a layout inside the card view component. Then we will transfer the components into this layout. You follow? So for this, I'll choose one more constraint layout from the palette and drag and drop it into the card view component. So now let's determine the height of the constraint layout component. I'm setting the layout height value to 75 dp. We must also set the layout height of the card view component to wrap content. Now, as you can see, the height of the card view component is about 75 dp. And another point that you'll need to pay attention to here is you should change the height of the constraint layout component, which is the root element, to wrap content. Otherwise, only one card view component will appear on the entire screen, right? So after doing all these operations, we can transfer the image view and the text view components to the design area. Notice that there are one image view and two text views in the design area. But the image view components are circular, not square. So our images will look a little rounded. So to get this look, we'll need to add a different library to our project. So for this, I'll open my browser and I'll write circle image, view, GitHub in the search bar. I can click on the first result and scroll down the open GitHub page, and you can see the necessary library to show your images in circular form. So we have to add the library here to our project. I choose the library here, and I'll just copy it. Now I can open the build Gradle file under Gradle scripts in Android Studio from the project directory. So here we'll just paste the library that we copied into the dependencies section. Then after doing this, I can press the Sync Now button in the upper right corner of the interface. That way we'll add the relevant library to our project. Cool. So as you can see, sync is now complete, and we can proceed with our design. All right, so first we can add an image view into the constraint layout component. And of course, this time we'll not select the image view component from the palette. If we select it from the palette, we'll get a square image view instead of a circular view, which is what we're going for. So to add that circle image view, I'm going to select the split option on the right and open the section with the XML codes. So this way I'll create the circle image view component in the innermost constraint layout. After creating the less than sign and typing DE, we can access the circle image view component. Now you can create the circle image view component by selecting this component and changing its related properties. Now there is a second method to do this. On the GitHub page where we've provided the relevant library, you can copy the XML code block here and paste it into the tags of the constraint layout component in the design area. So yeah, that's it. Of course, we did not transfer the images that we will use to our project yet. For now, let's move the country flags to the drawable folder. I'll select the drawable folder in the project directory. After right-clicking with the mouse, I'll select the Show in Explorer option. From the window that opens, I'll open the drawable folder, not the drawable V24 folder, my friends, only the folder that says drawable. Now I can select the 3 flags that I have previously obtained from the internet and drag them into the drawable folder. All right, so that way we have now transformed the images that we will use to the drawable folder. Now, as you can see, these 3 images have been added to the drawable folder. Cool. You can view the images by double-clicking the mouse. All right, so now let's continue where we left off with the design. I can write the name of any of my images inside of Profile. If you notice, we have determined the height and the constraint layout of the component as 75 dp, but here the height of the image is 96 dp. Therefore, part of the image is not visible on the screen. So what I'll do is I'll change the height and the width of the image to 60 dp. Notice that the components are marked in red because we're using the constraint layout and we haven't pinned the components yet. So we still haven't set their constraint values. If you want, we can determine the constraint values now. So I'll choose the card view component and pin it to the left, right, and up. So now let's pin the circle image view component and pin it to the left. Also, I will center the circle image view component vertically. I'll right-click with the mouse and select center vertically. And that way we have now centered the image view component vertically. Notice that the margin start value of the image view component, you see that? It's 0. Right on the left of the screen. There it is, 0. Well, I'm going to want to leave some distance here, don't you think? So what I'll do is I'll make the margin start at 5. Now let's add some text view components. I'll select the text view component from the palette and drag it to the component tree. And when you drag the components to the component tree, the components are positioned in the upper left corner of the design area. Cool, so let's pin this. Now let's add the second text view component. So what we'll do is we'll determine the constraint values of the text view components. I'll pin the first text view component to the left. I'll choose the second text view component and pin it to the left. And I'll now select both text view components, right-click with the mouse, select Chains, Create Vertical Chain as my option. Thus, both text views will be connected to each other at equal distances vertically. Since there will be country names in the first text component, I want it to be more specific. Now, the second text view component can remain in the background. Therefore, I'll choose the first text view component. First, I'll determine its ID, and I'll write text view country name. Now, let's increase the text size. So if we do 24 SP, I think that'll be fairly obvious. I'll also make the text color black. So now we can select the second text view component, edit its ID as text view detail. Press enter on the keyboard. Now we can change the text size. I'll just make the text size 16 and I'll not change the text color. So it'll stay that way. And finally, let's change the ID of the image view component. I'll change to image view. All right, my friends, we actually finished our design in general. However, I would like to show you a couple of advantages of using the card view. So we'll select the card view component and just look at the attribute section. Now notice here, the card corner radius feature. All right, so using this feature, you can curl the corners of the card view component, like I mentioned before, maybe. But for example, let me just make this value 7 again. So by using the card elevation feature, you can add height to the card view component. So this feature is also 7 dp. We can also leave some space between each card view on the screen. So for this, let's select the card view component. I'll write margin into the search bar in the attributes section, and I'll make the layout margin value 7 dp. And as you can see, there is some space around the edges of the card view component. That's cool. So after selecting the card view component, we can change the background color just by using the background tint property. You can choose any color that you want to from the color palette here. And if you want, we can choose a yellow color. So yeah, notice here that you can see the gap in the edges and the curvature in the corners of the card view component. All right, so we have completed our card view design. Now, I want to show you one more feature in order to learn how the card view design we made will look in the recycler view. In the activity main design from the attributes section, of course, we must select the RecyclerView component, otherwise we will not find the feature that we're looking for. So after selecting the RecyclerView component, we can select the card design that we made by using the list item feature. All right, so that way we can see in advance how our card design is going to be displayed on the screen. So when we run the application, our screen will look like this. All right, so we've finished the design section, my friends. We'll take a short break here, and I'll see you in the next lesson.